Welcome, everybody. We're very pleased to have with us today Nigel Fenwick, Vice President and Principal Analyst of CIOs at Forrester Research, as well as James McCormick, Principal Analyst of Customer Insights Professionals, also at Forrester Research. At this time, I'd like to pass the presentation over to Nigel to start our discussion. Nigel, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ryan. And good afternoon, evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world listening to this. So how to win in the digital business era with better customer experience. So what I'm going to do is start off this webinar with a little bit of dive into what do we mean by the digital business era and why is customer experience important. And if you've seen any of my webinars or any of my presentations, you'd be pretty familiar with the opening that I like to go with in terms of thinking about predators and prey for digital. So the robin redbreast is a predator, right? He's the early bird that catches the worm. Certainly from the worm's perspective, the robin is clearly a predator. But very often we don't really know where the predator is coming from. And so the person or the company that we think is a predator could easily become the prey. And that's the challenge in the digital world because very much the companies that we think about, that we compete with in markets, we may be watching and following what they're doing. But it's so easy today for a company to learn from another industry and apply the things they learn in a different way in the current industry and suddenly become a predator overnight, or even a company coming from outside the industry into the industry you're currently in. So the whole concept of predator and prey is built around, one, understanding what does it take to become a predator, to become a winner in the digital era, and the things to avoid when you kind of potentially become prey. And one of the things we do on a regular basis is obviously ask executives about their perspective on digital business. And in our recent study, we looked at CEOs and senior execs in companies and asked them the percentage of revenue they expect to be influenced by digital business by 2020. And what we found was there's a very large percentage of senior executives who understand and expect that digital will increasingly influence sales to the extent that they're actually expecting more than 50% of sales in many industries to be influenced by digital. So one of the things we want to be able to do is break down the numbers, right? What can we learn from looking behind the numbers? So we took the data from this survey, this analysis of executives, and looked at the companies that were currently influencing a significant portion of their sales by digital today and expect to continue to that through to the future. And we call those companies predators for the sake of this analysis. And then the companies that are actually not influencing a huge percentage of revenue by digital today, but expect to be influencing a significant amount by 2020, we'll call those transformers because they're really shifting the way they think about their business. And then the companies that are not really influencing a high percentage by digital today and don't expect a significant increase by 2020, we'll just, for the sake of argument, call those dinosaurs and see what we can learn. And really the interesting thing is, can we tease out anything from the data to say the predators and the transformers and the dinosaurs are doing things differently inside their organization? And one of the things that we've learned from looking at this is that the way the companies tend to think about business is slightly different between these two. It's really characterized by this slide, which really is about rethinking how you create value for your future customers. See, in the past, what we've done is we've typically thought about the needs of the customer and what kind of products or services can we build or develop, design to satisfy those needs, and then market the heck out of them, advertising, promotions to try and get customers to buy them and increase market share. Now, obviously, products and services are not going to go away. They're still very important. But it's increasingly evident that what we need to do is not only understand the needs of the customer, but truly understand the desires, because desires are emotionally driven. And we know that emotion is what causes us to buy a particular product or service. For example, if you think about buying a car, when you buy your car, you buy it because you have some needs, to fulfill. You need to be able to get from A to B. Maybe you have a family you want to transport, etc. But the type of car you buy, the brand, the model, typically is a very emotional kind of purchase. It's something that resonates with you as an individual, or you and your partner if you're buying one together. So the desires are really what drive a particular compulsion, a particular product. And to the degree that we can design digital experiences that help deliver the outcomes that satisfy the desires, then we can actually create more value on top of the products and services that we deliver. And we're starting to see companies actually do this on an increasing number of companies doing this. So it's not that the digital experiences entirely replace products or services, but obviously they could. But we need to think about digital experiences as a way of augmenting the value or multiplying the value that's created through products and services. And that's one of the things we find digital predators really focusing on. So we ask executives, what are the top factors, success factors for your company in achieving success in the future? And what's really interesting is that when you look at the differences between the predators, the transformers, and the dinosaurs, the predators stand out as having a unique set of success factors at the top of their list. And at the very top of their list are actually two things that came in equal from a sort of statistical dead heat, if you like. And those two things are new sources of value created by customer. Sorry, I'm going the wrong direction here. Can you take us back, Ryan? I'm not sure how we go backwards on this slide. To the Venn diagram. Thanks. So the ability to actually create these new sources of value from digital experiences, and the ability to create actually world-class customer experiences through the digital services that have been created and the other physical products and services that are created. These two things stand at the top of the list. And what we find from that is that it kind of characterizes these companies as being customer obsessed. They are truly focused on the customer. In fact, if you think about, say, the digital companies that you may know, Amazon, for example, is one of the companies that comes to mind when everybody thinks of a digital company, kind of a born digital company. And if you look at the sort of the value statements that Amazon shares with its employees, being customer obsessed is actually right up there at number one in terms of the list of things that they help employees understand about what's important to the company. So it's reinforced not only from the data, but also from what we see in the research around how successful digital companies operate. And so when companies are looking to transform, so they sort of traditional businesses that are looking to transform, to understand how to leverage digital to create revenue and drive revenue in the future, there's a lot that can be learned from observing what these customer-obsessed digital predators do today. So these two things are really important. Now, if you think about what does it mean to be customer-obsessed, we have to understand a little bit about what's behind that customer experience story. And we know, again, from the research we've done over the last 10 years, actually more than 10 years, around customer experience, that there are two sides to the customer experience story. There's obviously the ability to create the customer experiences from those customer-facing touch points, which are increasingly digital. But there are also this need to actually understand the operational side of the business and make sure that the operational side of the business is creating value for customers at the same time. And in fact, what we see the digital predators do, and increasingly the transformers do, is focus that operational excellence not on driving out efficiency, but actually driving agility in service of customers. So we describe that in terms of the definition we have for digital business. We describe digital business as being companies that create world-class customer experiences and drive operational excellence in service of customer agility. So these two things go hand in hand. And when we think about the customer experience journey and the touch points that customers have, very often when you analyze those customer journeys and the touch points, you realize that the things that are breaking for the customer inside that customer journey, inside of that customer experience, actually those breakpoints are being caused or triggered by something deep inside the operation business. Oftentimes, sometimes something deep inside the core enterprise applications that might be running, or some business policy or process that's being set that is not designed to support the customer. So customer obsession requires us to look at both aspects of the business, both the customer-facing touch points along the customer journey, but also the operational aspects of the business that sit beneath that. And in doing so, we have to paint a vision for the company that helps the employees understand how the company is going to change in the future. And Jeff Immelt at GE has done a really good job of shaping the image and the vision for employees of GE to help them understand what it means to become a digital business. The company is going to go through this huge change and continue going through this huge change. GE's been on this journey for approximately 10 years now in terms of transforming its entire business to become a digital business, to become an industrial internet business. And it's this transition that Jeff Immelt's been able to paint for the employees and share that vision of where they're going and what it means to make this change. And it's being applied across all the businesses in GE. And bear in mind, GE is a huge manufacturing business. They're a traditional B2B business with a lot of manufacturing divisions inside the company. And I've even seen a presentation from their upstream oil and gas business, a presentation the CIO gave a number of years ago on the upstream oil and gas business, where the CIO is actually showing a customer journey map and the touch point analysis they're doing to talk about how they're improving the service and value for their upstream oil and gas customers. And there's not really much more of a B2B business than that. So it's not just B2C, it's very much B2B as well. Now, to really succeed at this, we have to fundamentally understand that we've been asking the wrong question in marketing for years. So in marketing, we've been asking, what are our customer needs and how do we build those better products and services? We need to go back to thinking about what are those customer desires, because needs and desires are very, very different. As I said earlier, emotion is very much part of desire, right? And emotion drives that purchasing factor. So we need to understand that desires are what drive behavior, but the desire to actually have a particular outcome is driven by this sort of perception of value. So when we decide we want to buy something, we have a perceived value of that. And what the experience that we have will alter that value over time. So perceived value is something that's innately personal. Each one of us has a perceived value around the things that we buy or use. And to the degree that the experiences actually meet our expectations, they'll either increase or decrease the perceived value over time. So if the experience is below our expectations, then the perceived value goes down. If the experience exceeds our expectations, then the perceived value goes up. Now, the challenge in a digital business era is that those things, the denominator there, the expectations, are actually increasing and changing on a regular basis, because we have experiences, new experiences every day as human beings that we have with our smartphones, our digital experiences evolve and change daily. And we bring those experiences into the workplace, so that's why it's equally important in B2B, because in a B2B world, we're not really dealing with companies, we're dealing with people inside those companies. And so their expectations are changing and evolving. They're starting to expect their business suppliers to be able to deliver the same kind of digital experiences as they get in their consumer lives. And so the expectation is changing on a regular basis, and in order to be able to keep that perceived value high, we must evolve the experience on a continuous. If we fail to evolve the experience, then what happens to the balance on this equation? The experience stays the same, the experience goes up, so our perceived value goes down. And over time, that means that customers will move away from our brand. And what we see in industries that have very low cost of switching to another product or service, we see this change reflected very quickly. So, for example, in retail, where it's very easy to move to another product or brand to go buy from another retailer, customers are very sensitive to whether or not a particular retailer will deliver an experience that matches their expectation. In other industries, the switching costs are much higher. So, for example, in banking or insurance, it's actually a lot more difficult or painful from a customer perspective to change their supplier. So there's an inherent delay built into the system, if you like. It's much easier for companies in those industries to deliver a bad experience and not actually lose customers very quickly. And so this kind of builds in a false sense of security in those industries because customers aren't leaving, so there's a sense of, okay, this isn't important. But eventually the balance on this equation becomes so great, or so the imbalance becomes so great, the customers will start leaving. And by then, when you start to see those sales numbers decline, it's actually too late to do anything about it because you're now playing catch-up against the companies that have been investing in this customer experience to drive this perception of value higher in the future. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with figuring out how do we actually apply this in day-to-day, right? So this is great in theory. What do we need to do to apply this in day-to-day in terms of thinking about how we design our systems and those experiences that deliver those digital experiences that deliver that value to the customer. So to help walk us through that, I'm going to invite James to join in the discussion.
Oh, thank you, Nigel, and I really love your case that you made for the digital business and how we can use it to drive experiences and new sources of value. And as you say, I want to dig a little bit into kind of how do we do this, and I guess the Insights operational framework, or to put it a little bit differently, talk a little bit about the data and analytics that we use to really drive these experiences and this additional value at scale, so that we can move from, I guess, dinosaurs and transition into these predators that you were talking about. So I want to start off by this German gentleman, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Excuse my pronunciation for our German attendees, but he was a highly respected statesman at the beginning of the 19th century, and he kind of proves to us through his statement here that we've been thinking about intelligent action for a while, for many years, and it's not necessarily new. I mean, here he states there's nothing more frightful than ignorance in action, and they use much better kind of language than we use today to kind of describe these things. And at Forrester we've continued this fine tradition of let me see if I can get controlled here. Fine tradition of using insights to drive intelligent action, and we firmly believe that systems of insights are really at the center of the age of the customer. Apologies there. Let's jump back. Thanks, Ryan. And that really drive the engagements that we have with our customers. So when we act upon those engagements and we act to make them more optimized, it's really insights, obviously together with its partner systems like systems of automation and our understanding through systems of record of the customer to drive that. But insights today is really important for us to become digital predators. So my particular focus of my research is really around digital systems of insights that drive digital systems of engagement. So I want to talk a little bit about the, from a digital perspective, what that looks like and what these systems of insights look like. So a little bit of a history lesson. Many of us know this already, but just contextualizes the discussion is, back in the mid-90s when, websites really started to become vaguely important to us, we were using web server logs as a system of insight, as a way of understanding how successful that particular digital point of engagement, the website, was, when it came to engaging the customers. So happened then that perhaps as brands and as these large enterprises, we weren't taking them that seriously. But it was the kind of beginning of the century, I guess, beginning of last decade, when first of all, marketers and e-commerce professionals started to take this web channel more seriously. Standards, internet standards, browser standards, and things like JavaScript standards started to become more prevalent, and we could then, we had a large number of third-party vendors, for instance, that helped us understand how customers were interacting on the browser. So not just within the page, but across pages. And it was really kind of exciting back then because we could have a better measurements, and we could measure things that were really important to the business. So for instance, did that user consume that piece of content? Did we click through? Did we purchase, etc.? And web analytics was became an important way, system of insight really. And then it was more than just our own websites. It was about how do we how are customers coming from search engines or publisher sites to our website and then off again, and became more about just not only our websites but other digital properties. So digital intelligence or digital analytics was the prevailing word back then, and it was for a brief moment in time we could almost sit back and feel that we had a real understanding of the engagements that customers had with us on our websites. That was until smartphones came along, and they became a primary way for our customers to engage with our brands, not just through marketing and e-commerce, through actually consuming products and services. And so we entered this age where we needed a more pervasive understanding of that customer instead of this channel-focused understanding where we had an email customer, we had perhaps a web customer, we perhaps had an e-commerce customer, marketing customer, and we needed a more holistic understanding because digital front ends through things like mobile phones and the fact that it was more than just web, it was also email, but also apps, push messaging, and then these connected devices, these wearables, these connected cars, and generally this Internet of Things have really challenged our traditional digital system, and we've now needed to have more of a digital intelligence approaches that seeks to garner a holistic view of the customer across all of these channels, to bring together all our systems of insight to work together to understand that customer, and then to be able to optimize the customer engagement, not the web engagement, not the app engagement, but the engagement with the customer, with James McCormick across all of these things. And so we needed to be more digitally intelligent. So that's what I want to really focus on in the next few minutes really, is how do we become digitally intelligent so that we can become these predators that Nigel was talking about. Well, first of all, let's have a look at Nigel's a great formula that he had here. And in order to be able to manage this formula, we need to measure things, right? We need a complete set of metrics for understanding digital engagements so that we can manage that formula of experience, expectation, and perceived value. And at Forrester, we believe that there's a number, especially when it comes to digital engagement, a number of metrics that we should collect, and this represents almost a subsection of those, but it just hopefully gives you a feel for the extent of metrics that we need to bring together in order to be able to manage this formula so that we can move from dinosaurs to predators. Now, at Forrester, we change, when it comes to the customer experience and the customer insights team, we organize these metrics a little bit differently in terms of customer experience metrics on that left-hand side, which really tries to understand what the perceived experience is, and also what the system, what the experiences are we are delivering through things like digital performance metrics, or which is the the evolved form of application performance management systems, right? Or understand what customers are really perceiving through voice of the customer metrics, contextual metrics, etc. So those are the metrics that we use to understand our customer experience. We have these customer relationship metrics, which are all about the business value that that the customer gets from us, and we are getting from that customer throughout the entire life cycle, as well as through specific types of engagement metrics like our conversion metrics, like did the customer consume that product, did we click through to a page, did we click through a website, did we actually purchase something, through to our comparative metrics, where we are trying to answer that question, what type of level of conversion do we need for success? What are our competitors achieving? What are we achieving? What did we achieve yesterday, and are we improving on it? So as you can see, to gain a holistic understanding of our customers requires a number of different metrics. which we need to bring together to really fully understand the customer. But the problem is when you look at our traditional systems of engagement, there we go, I probably clicked through, let me go back a bit. So our traditional systems of engagement, such as web analytics systems, such as those monitoring web server logs, really aren't good enough for us to fully understand the customer during their moments of engagement. You know, as I mentioned, they are very siloed in the way that we collect data. So we might, for instance, collect, you know, through our e-commerce team, the revenues and the basket data that we have. Our marketers might collect, for instance, the you know, how many customers they got through and the types of customers they're getting in acquisition channels. You know, our operations guys might understand the performance that we are providing customers during any particular engagement, but we're not really bringing those together to fully understand the engagements we're giving our customers and the actual perceived engagement, how they perceive that, and how they are actually then impacting the things that are important to our customers. The other thing about these traditional systems of insight is really that they are not actionable at the speed of customer engagement. You know, traditionally as a marketer, an e-commerce professional, an ops person, you know, we see these things happening in our reports and our trending, you know, diagrams and dashboards, but you know, we're reacting too slowly. We're going to the market and say, well, make a tweak on the way that we're delivering that experience. We're going to the ops guy and say, change the way that the web's, but that's too slow. But we've already, the damage is done. Our systems of insight need to be, you need to drive more real-time systems of engagement, and they need to be set up for that. So then, how do we do that? You know, so we at Forrester believe that there is a digital intelligence architecture that we need to bring to bear, and that needs to be closely integrated. So we need, for instance, a data tier that can feed and generate a holistic view of that customer, bring it from various different data sources, be able to ingest it and make sense of it in a data layer, and feed that analytics tier that has different types of ways of understanding that customer through the performance, such as the performance we're giving our customers as we engage with them, through to how the customer is reacting to that, through to the you know, the kind of content and the creative parts of that, and analyzing that, to ultimately drive an optimization play where we are continually, in an automated fashion using machine learning, drive and improve that experience. And that's what we need. And these things need to be tightly integrated and feeding each other, so that we are driving the interactions across multiple digital touch points, but in a coordinated, customer-focused kind of way. So, and it takes a number of different technologies that we are using today. You know, we need to bring them to bear. But and many of us are using most, if not all, of these the different technologies. But what we need to do as we procure and we implement them and we build them out is to do that within a holistic view of digital intelligence. So what are we trying to achieve overall? And ultimately what we are trying to do is optimize the customer experience across that entire customer lifecycle. And so we need, for instance, our social analytics tool to feed off the same data model that our web analytics tool kind of feeds off to, as well as our predictive modeling, so that we can, for instance, drive relevant optimized experiences across you know, all of those channels, using things like A/B testing, multivariate testing, you know, things like personalization engines driven by behavioral targeting, etc. So we need to bring them all to bear. So just to add a little bit of color to this, I want to talk a little bit about application performance management systems, which, as we know, and many of us use them, are really useful systems that over the years have provided really good information about issues that might occur with the performance of the system, of a particular, say, in-browser experiences, that and how and where the issues occur in the whole delivery stack. And you know, there's no doubt they deliver great value, but they're pretty isolated from these other systems of insight that we have, from the web analytics systems, from the mobile app analytics systems that are understanding customer experiences and from a different perspective, and from voice of the customer systems that actually tell us what the customer actually thinks of it. So I challenge us today to really bring our APM systems and embed them within our digital intelligence architecture, so that we actually convert them from these application performance management systems into what we today at Forrester refer to as digital performance management systems that actually ingest a common data understanding of that customer to drive to actually actively optimize the experience with our customers using the insights from more than just the performance aspect of it. So that is digital performance management for you, basically converted from APM using a digital intelligence approach. So then if we look at the the benefits of a DPM approach or digital performance approach, we can see that using these kind of approaches, we can understand the different performance needs of a diverse customer set. So many of us here on this call might come from the online gambling industries, particularly in Europe. It's a big industry, and for that particular industry, we know that the top few percentages of customers actually generate 80 to 90% of the revenue. It's very important for companies like that to really understand which customers are getting what performance experiences, and being able to use a common understanding of the customer is really important for them to be able to deliver the right performance to the right audiences. So these approaches, by embedding APM to make a DPM within these digital intelligence architectures, really opens up the possibility of creating, for instance, performance segments that are linked with, for instance, other customer segments. So you could say, high-value customers that have in the past been delivered a poor performance do something different. Imagine if you could do that and kind of link it and do it dynamically. So that's really the promise of these this brand new DPN approach. So I want to take a step back now and just talk a little bit about how do we become digitally intelligent? How do we build up a digitally intelligent practice? And what we can see is, first of all, we need a strategic approach. It sounds pretty simple, right? But many of us, in fact, most of us, our studies are showing, really don't have at a senior enough level a strategy that says, you know what, we want to use a consolidated understanding of our customer to drive greater experiences, to deliver that additional value that Nigel was talking about, so that we can become digital predators. That's a fairly simple, obvious message that if any of us were having a one-to-one conversation, we wouldn't have to convince each other. But at an organizational level, at a senior enough level, we do not have that. So that's the first thing. So none of this stuff is really that difficult if we have a focused approach at a senior enough level. Of course, once you've got that strategic initiative and support from execs within the organization and well-defined what needs to be in it. Of course, how do we own it, right? Who owns the understanding of the customer, and what skill sets do we need, and what are the processes? So that kind of ownership structure set, and that really depends on the type of customer, the type of organization that you are, and also what you're trying to achieve and where you are on that maturity curve. So I'm going to park that for a bit and just talk a little bit about these other three elements, which are the technical approach, which I've talked about already, the metrics and KPIs, which I've talked about already through the various types of metrics that we need to cover, and really focus on the optimization piece, which, if you think about it, ultimately with digital intelligence, what we are trying to do is we're trying to optimize the customer experience and that additional value that we've talked about through the insights that we gain from our customers, and to be able to act upon it. So I want to talk a little bit about this, the philosophies that we need to drive that with our digital intelligence system. So imagine fairly simple yet powerful initiative where we seek within our organization to learn from every moment that the customer engages with us, so that we can evolve the next moment that they engage with us, so we can improve upon it. Imagine if we had this continually evolving kind of thought in our head, but and we just want to do that, right? So how do we do that? We need to kind of operationalize that, right? And so first thing, we need to instrument our digital touch points, so we are collecting information and data and metrics on every time that the customer interacts with us, so that we can, and imagine we feed this holistic kind of model of that customer, and we update that model of understanding of the customer from these metrics so that we can evolve that customer understanding. And then the next thing is what happens if we use that understanding to evolve the treatment or the experience that we are delivering to that customer, to change it, to tweak it somehow, and then feed that back into the next interaction, or even in a real-time scenario, into the same session or the same interaction area that we are working with the customer on. So we did that. We did it at a continuous scale, and we did it at at scale across the entire digital frontiers that we have with our customers. We suddenly have a competitive strategy that involves and optimizes the customer engagement and customer experience, and delivers that, has a potential of delivering that value that Nigel was talking about, and thereby helping us move towards this digital predator that is one of the themes of this this particular discussion we have today. So hopefully it gives you this digital intelligence, the insights that it drives. It kind of gives you some view as to how to digitally transform your business to become more effective and more competitive in this post-digital era that we find ourselves in. So just to add a little bit of value, I want to start tailing off my discussion by just looking at some examples about what this might mean to us, just to kind of build that up. So first of all, just want to talk about the marketers of the Star Wars franchise, and specifically those that were involved with the release of the Force Awakens, the latest release episode of that entire series. And what they did a few days before the premiere, on their website, they decided, you know what, we're going to try and improve the appeal to the web visitor by changing the content, by upscaling the content that we have on the site, just to they had some thoughts about what would improve that. But what they didn't do, what they didn't have, they were very blind to the fact that as they added this additional content, they added additional page objects, and therefore added additional page weightings, page weight basically in terms of data within that page, which in effect slowed down the page download speeds and affected availability, etc. So it had a real effect on perhaps the experience of to the customer that these marketers weren't aware of. So marketers are very obviously obsessed with the kind of left brain access part of that, so the painting the pretty pictures, delivering great content where it counts, but we're less aware of the performance and the impact that they might have. And so not the traditional APM approach, where we are not mixing these business metrics such as conversion and what we do on the site with the performance, really blinds us to some potential disasters that we might have. So that's just why we should move on from something like our traditional approaches. Let's talk about another example where T-Mobile, mobile phone company, has what they do is they have a self-service site that provides support to their customers, and for them this online self-service is a way of delivering better, more scalable, good experiences as they seek support, but also for them it's really important. It helps them reduce costs, because every call to the call center adds a lot of cost to that. So what they've done is they've sought to link conversion and performance metrics. So basically the funnel for conversion as as their customer try to navigate their way down the self-service portal, and those conversion points with the actual performance metrics by actually measuring at different points of that funnel. And what they actually found by doing this is that just by simply linking these two sets of insights, or these two sets of data, was that when 5 pages were performing badly, that conversion rates and cost savings dropped by over 50%, so real kind of impact. In fact, when all the pages in the funnel were performing somewhat badly, those savings dropped by over 80%. So this really gave them a great business case for fixing the problem, for investing, making tweaks to the investment and how they kind of tackle it, and really added a real business value to some operational to to date had been quite a operational kind of cost center rather than a value add center. So just some of the benefits you get from a digital intelligence approach. One final kind of example is I want to talk about Nordstrom, who is a North American high fashion retailer, and they have a anniversary sale. And just before one of their anniversary sales, I saw a decline in customer satisfaction through their Voice of the Customer program. And so really, okay, there seems to be a problem. And so what they did is they took their real user monitoring data, combined it with their, the infrastructure metrics that kind of told them what was happening, further down the stack, and to really understand. So by correlating voice of customer with the RUM data, you could kind of correlate where the problems in the journey were happening, and by combining the RUM data with the infrastructure metrics, you could really then start to solve that issue. So by linking all of these different data types, you could very quickly proact and find out where the problems are, and they were able to proactively tune the front end and back end systems to drive and improve the experience of the customer and gain real business value. So this is a great example of gaining business intelligence and how you can link these various systems all these data insights together. These are and as we go forward, you'll see more sophisticated real-time versions of these kind of things going forward as the digital performance management systems evolve, so to speak. So I want to end off my part of the discussion with a couple of, I guess, suggestions on how we can accelerate the adoption of digital intelligence and these approaches. Well, first of all, and I alluded to it a little earlier, we need board-level support, right? We need a strategy around this that is a high enough strategy and is really embedded in our overall corporate strategy to be customer-centric, customer-obsessed through driving great experiences, right? And our senior management team needs to have that written down in a kind of a great strategy document that everybody understands, and that they invest in this and they support this through relevant resource allocation across multiple different functions. So this is not a operational function to improve the performance of the website. This is not just about marketing, trying to do better marketing. It's not about a customer experience team trying to deliver great experiences. This is about bringing that all together and driven from the top down. Without that, you really are not going to extract the value that you can out of these digital intelligence approaches to become a digital predator. Secondly is, this kind of stuff is, early adopters will maximize the benefit from these things. You shouldn't be hanging around with the stuff. You want to be achieving it as soon as possible. So whilst Forrester, we firmly believe that it needs to be a core competency, digital intelligence that is, to help you generate a strategy, to help you then deploy that strategy and then operationalize it. Get your use partners to help you accelerate that and kind of get you there sooner rather than later. And then finally, at the beginning of this whole journey, you shouldn't seek to try and solve the problem all in one big thick document that we take to our execs and say this is how it's done, because I'm not lying, this stuff can be difficult. You need to find your way. What does digital intelligence mean for you? What does it mean for the business, and how are you actually going to deploy it, right? And so start small with these small projects of bringing data together, analyzing it and using it to optimize various parts of the journey. That will help you build the case, understand what it means for you, and also help you, garner the kind of resources or understand what types of resources you will need. So start small, be agile, be iterative as you start this journey. So with that said, I'm going to hand over to you, Ryan, just to finish off with, I know you had something to say, and with a few questions afterwards as well, I believe.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Nigel and James. Fantastic presentations. I just wanted to remind everybody quickly that Dynatrace does offer an industry-leading digital performance management platform with 8,000 plus leading industry customers. And anyone interested in learning more, connecting with us, you can do so via your platform of choice, and we'd be happy to talk further about that. So we do have several questions. I think we've got some time to get to a handful of these. So the first of which looks like it could be addressed to either Nigel or James. And the question is, which reports would you recommend I look at for evaluating CX or DPM vendors?
Nigel, if you're okay, I'll jump on this one, and then
sure.
I'll let you answer
Yep.
it. Great. So, for me, the whole digital intelligence playbook, I think, is really relevant to that particular discussion. So at Forrester, we have playbooks, which are these tranche of research that are placed in logical order around, for instance, the vision of digital intelligence. How do we how do we bring it all together? What is it, definition through to how do we operationalize it? And so definitely I would look at that. That if you want specific reports, we have one called Optimize Customer Experience with Digital Intelligence. Of course, at Forrester, we have a defining document, or a document that defines digital performance management, and it's how to evolve from application performance management, and we've called that it's a brief, and take application performance to the next level with digital performance management. So yeah, if you just start there, certainly from my perspective, it will give you a good start. And Nigel, any suggestions from your side?
Well, I think there's obviously things like the digital transformation playbook for CIOs that sort of lays out a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about. But I think also if you're thinking about customer experience and looking at vendors in customer experience, we have a wave on digital experience service providers that was published. So there's a lot of ways that actually compare the different vendors in the sort of the CX ecosystem that I think people need to think about. And so there's a raft of research there that's worth looking at too. So plenty of research to cover this topic.
Excellent. Thank you both. The other question we've got here next on the list is a question of how do you obtain voice of customer metrics? Is it customer surveys? Is it web intercept surveys?
Nigel, did you? If you're okay, I'll jump on this one, and then.
Yeah, you go for it, James.
Yeah. So when it comes to digital customer engagement, I think whoever asked that question basically mentioned a few ways of gaining customer, the voice of the customer, and really understanding. In the world of digital customer interaction, you have these voice of the customer type vendors in terms of technology that have these pop-up surveys that can target those surveys based on behavior of the particular types of behavior, or they can randomize it, and they just really, what they're doing is they're popping up at various events within the engagement, and they're just saying, what do you think, or are they doing things like NPS scoring or just other types of opinion scoring. So yeah, that's a typical way, specifically within, say, the websites or mobile engagements that we are kind of seeing those things. Of course, there's kind of email surveys to existing customers. There's different, you can ask that within a support channel, where at the end the operator says, well, what do you think, etc. So there's a number of different ways, but those VOC technologies are where I come across it mostly in my research.
There's also, it's interesting to me, I look at companies that are sort of monitoring this, and obviously they use the metrics that you're talking about. I'm fascinated by the companies that actually look at the actual interactions that customers are having either through a mobile app or online, and trying to analyze what a customer's doing and where they're trying to go, what was their intended engagement, and then did they finish that engagement? Did they go off and do something else? Did they take a look at? Did they go to another app? Did they go to another part of the website and they couldn't? Did they go to search and not find what they wanted? So they're actually trying to monitor the activity the customer's doing and doing sort of predictive analytics to figure out where they were trying to go, and then figuring out, does the customer actually get there? So there's sort of the actual ask the customer, and there's the observe what the customer's doing and figure out, did they actually do what they wanted to do?
All right, thank you very much. Okay, the next one on the list here. How would you recommend gaining executive support?
It's a question that comes up a lot, particularly around CX is one of those notoriously difficult things to push, and so if you're looking at sort of the analytics and performance management, it's sort of a subset of CX and creating that value. Clearly, one of the things that you have to do to drive this across an organization is to get the CEO to understand the importance of creating value for the customer and driving revenue. CEOs, fortunately, if it's a for-profit company, are very revenue-oriented, and so being able to connect to the direct revenue output of these experiences, I think, helps to do as much as you can benchmark, sort of A/B testing, show improvements in revenue. That gets the attention of senior executives very quickly. But also, there's if you look at the overall impact of customer experience, Harley Manning has just published a report from our customer experience group that looks at the actual impact of investing in customer experience and driving revenue, and there's a very clear correlation between the degree to which the overall customer experience of a company is sort of at the top of the industry and the revenue growth of the company. So we've got pretty good research to support that, and that's going to get the attention of the C-suite pretty quickly. And certainly when you look at the the CFO and how do we actually steer sort of the culture of the company towards customer obsession, then there's got to be that buy-in to that this is good for our overall growth and for our shareholders, for a public company. So that's very important at that level. And I think you've got to start with the benchmark and be able to show the incremental benefits. But you've got to get that buy-in from the CEO to the fact that customer obsession is just the way to go forward for the business. Oftentimes it's really down to the CEO getting their aha moment, getting their kind of that point in time where they just get it. And sometimes you can get that best by the executive team going and looking at what other companies in other industries are doing that are maybe leading customer experience in their industry. So take a look at Forrester's Customer Experience Index, see which companies are at the top of the index that are non-competing companies, and see if you can get the executives to go on kind of this sort of customer experience, digital experience safari to go see what those companies are doing and hear from the CEOs as to why they feel they're investing in it and why it's important for them. And that can help get the C-suite buy-in as well. That's really important. James?
Yeah, I think you covered most of the areas I'd cover, but I think just to go back to one of your first points, Nigel, for me, when it comes to getting executive support, they all interested in the business value that you get from any kind of approach, right? So when you look, just getting back to that whole investing in driving actions or engagement through digital intelligence, right? What you see is you start off small with you get these optimization teams, right, that are formed really through, as you kind of mentioned, simple A/B tests, right, that use a very simple behavioral data model that is baked into that A/B testing thing, and just showing some value. You get X amount of uplift when you use a blue button instead of a red button. Just start simple, right? Or you do a little bit of personalization. You come in from the UK, there's Union Jack. From the States, he has the Stars and Stripes, and those kind of small things generate perceivable value. Then when you get a little bit of interest, you then get some investment to build out your data model. So improve the analytical and data systems and invest a little bit more in that. That drives even more value, and thereby kind of building up the visibility from execs on the value that this approach can take, but also helps you really understand what it's going to take to deliver this going forward. So yeah, that's just an elaboration on what you said a bit earlier, Nigel.
I think where you started to go with this too, Nigel and James, actually bleeds into another question here, and this will be the last one that we've got time for. The question is, how do you know what you're delivering is fast enough? Is it conversions? Is it benchmarks? Or is it something else?
Yeah, should I jump on this one, Nigel, first?
Yeah, why don't you take this one? Yeah.
So yeah, for me, this is why you need to kind of link your performance metrics. So is it fast enough with your what you're trying to achieve as a business, right? So if it is delivering what you're trying to achieve as a business and helping you grow, then it's fast enough, right? Doesn't really matter whether it takes 10 seconds or 1 second or whatever, really, in theory, right? And so really linking your speed, or is it fast enough, the speed metrics or the performance metrics, and being able to link that with your business KPIs really answers that question ultimately. Of course, there's a bunch of benchmarks out there through companies like Dynatrace that give you a bunch of benchmarks, so you can kind of see what other competitive firms are doing, achieving in their particular parts of the funnel. You've got, and that's from a performance metrics. You get a similar type of benchmarking when it comes to conversion metrics in the e-commerce and marketing space. So kind of have a look at them as well to give you that external perspective. But ultimately, if you link your operational performance metrics with your your business metrics, which digital performance management is seeking to achieve, then you get that answer implicitly because it's serving my business properly, and therefore it must be fast enough, right?
Yeah, very well said. Thank you.
It's so important to think about what the customer's doing, right? And that linkage to sort of the business outcome, and it's ultimately think about that equation about are you creating value for the customer, and the challenge in the digital world, going back to how do you succeed in the digital era, is that the expectation of what fast enough is constantly evolving, right? So think back 10 years, our expectation of how fast something should respond is radically different to what it is today. And I don't know if you're anything like me, but I get frustrated if there's even a second of delay on anything these days. It's just astonishing just how impatient we've become with technology, right? And so that expectation is evolving so quickly, and you have to be able to understand where my expectation is of the both from an employee's perspective but a customer's perspective, because employees are sometimes helping customers, right? And how often have we been on the phone with somebody in a call center and they've said, oh, just hold on a second, my system is being slow. Well, that's a really bad touch point from a customer experience perspective, right? The poor employee is saying, I can't help you because my system's slow, and they're sympathizing with the customer. So we've got to figure out how to make sure those kind of things don't happen so that we can keep that equation in balance and keep creating that value for the customer.
All right, thank you very much. Nigel, James, fantastic job. Thanks very much to the audience as well for joining us today. Just a few closing items. Just to remind everyone, this session is being recorded. All registrants will be provided with the link to the replay just in a few days. If you have any questions that weren't addressed during the broadcast, please feel free to reach out to us. This concludes today's session. Thank you for participating. Have a great afternoon.